Step into the unknown with Paranormal M, where reality meets the supernatural. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to be the first to experience our latest spine-tingling narratives. Hit that like button. Scary beings are a good sign. These beings, be they aliens or demons, seem to be evil, a majority of them. In the Islamic tradition, some of these beings are Muslim, Christians, and atheist, but not all are evil. So if they come to you in the form they choose is scary to you, then that is a good thing, because they don't believe that they can come to you in a good form because that won't, quote-unquote, work on you, try to befriend you and abuse you. I know of a story of a Muslim girl who had serious issues. Father went to Iraqi, a Muslim exorcist, told him that his daughter was being dragged downstairs by a being that was claiming her to be his. Long story short, the Iraqi found out that this demon alien being came to her in a good form. She slowly stopped being afraid, started to accept this being. They fornicated again and again until she started to feel weird. Sometimes, if we accept these beings, weird things seem normal, like floating small amounts off the floor. When she wanted to stop the relationship, Hip, the being, would not want to leave her. And this is when it started acting out, and the family started realizing that she was possessed. She was helped by the exorcist. But the point is that if they're trying to scare you, they will take the form that does, and they only scare you if you're doing a good enough job at resisting their influence over you in everyday life. If you're being a good person, in this day and age that bar is set pretty low, then these beings will resort to dream state attempts at corrupting you. If you're trying to be a good person, that is enough for you to level yourself a good person. The enemy's real. The fight is real. Keep on fighting. You lose all the battles and still win the war. Random pink light. My husband and I were both playing a video game on our own desks at night. Our desks sit side by side. We're no more than 3 feet from each other, and we were facing the wall. Our blinds are closed, and our room is pretty lit by our lighting above. Then all of a sudden a bright pink light blinded the both of us. Lasted no more than a snap of a finger would last. But it was quiet, but insanely bright. The best way to describe it is as if somebody was standing in like a foot from your face and took a picture with those Polaroid cameras. Only with this light being pink, and once it was gone, we had no lingering annoying light that clouded our vision for a minute afterwards. Poof, and it was gone. I yelled repeatedly, "What the fuck was that?" My husband was smart enough to say, "Check the time." 11:50 p.m. He mentions how he'd looked at the time a few minutes before the pink flash, and it was only 11:45. So no missing time. This light was seen by both of us, so it can't be any retinal distortion. I called my sister right away, and she thought maybe it was like a computer glitch. But I reassured her that if it had been from my computer screen, then I'd be able to see my desk and everything on it. But that flash was so incredibly bright. It's like it blinded pretty much both of us completely. And it was pink. Like it couldn't have been our lighting in our room. We just have an overhead light. No neon lights, no pink lights. I can't think of a single explanation. That night we went to sleep. My husband woke up and started yelling, "Oh fuck, oh fuck!" Which in almost a decade of sleeping next to him, he has never startled awake like that, ever. After asking if he was okay and what was wrong, he just said he had to go pee. Later the next day I asked him about it. He said that he had a nightmare and he had just died. I don't know if it was related to that or the flash of pink light, but I think it was worth mentioning since, again, he's never woken up yelling and scared before. Big Red House. Long read, FYI. There's one house in particular that I've been in and out from birth to 13 years old. This house is one of 4 or 5 historic landmarks of Grafton. It's in Wisconsin, on the corner of 12th Avenue and Spring Street. This house was my favorite house, and it was always haunted as fuck. This house was built in the late 1800s and was originally owned by the Weber family. The factory that they ran is still standing kitty corner across the street, covered by a bunch of vines and overgrown trees and bushes. You can actually see the faint name on the building if standing really close and in the right light. So to kind of give you the grand basic tour of the house, which is needed, it's a Victorian-style home with the turret-facing spring. The side of the house by the driveway is where everybody comes and goes out of. We never use the main entrance. On the driveway side, there's a window leading up to the second floor, which is where the stairs are to get to the second floor. We lived in the upstairs second and third floors, as the second floor has a kitchen as well. My grandma, who owned the house, lived in the first floor, and then we all used the basement. Upon entering the side of the house, right when you walked in, to the left is the door to the basement. Straight ahead are 3 steps, and then to the left is the stairs to the second floor. Straight ahead are doors to my grandma's part of the house. Once in her part, you are in the dining room. To the right by her entryway is an old maid door, which on the other side is the kitchen. There's an entryway to her kitchen as well, which was also her pantry, and then once in the kitchen is her bathroom. To your left of the entryway is her bedroom and then the living room. Basement. Once at the bottom of the stairs, far left is the woodwork tool room. Kitty corner straight ahead had 2 storage rooms, and then to the left was more storage. To the right was where the laundry was done, and in there was a giant cistern. This is how old the house had been. It was back when it was built, that's how they got water. Second floor. Left was when we lived there. The den and the TV room, and then there was a foyer, the kitchen and a bathroom along with the stairs to the third floor. And the top of the third floor to the right was my room, which was also part of the turret. Kitty corner left was my dad's room, then down the hall on the left was the bathroom, and farther down was 2 bedrooms. My brother slept in those. There was also an attic that I never saw myself. My grandma said it was empty. Here are my experiences. I hated this basement. I always was terrified of it, not because it was damp, icky, and dark, but because it always felt like, well, the sense of somebody watching me or something was going to get me. And I got very strong vibe to the point that it gave me goosebumps. I absolutely refused to go into the storage rooms down there. Could never explain why. The cistern gave me the chills. I always had every single light on down there. Foyer. My grandma had renters in between us living there. She had a stereo, which, well, she didn't really know how to operate, but it did always play music at 3 p.m. My grandma didn't know how to turn it off, so she unplugged it, and it would still play music. One of my brother's punishments as a kid was if his toys were taken away. My dad would take out the batteries, too. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to hearing a strange noise. My brother's room was pretty far from mine, so how I heard it, I have no clue. But all I heard was this from his room, and it was one of his remote control cars. I froze. Goosebumps popped up. I'm just hyperventilating. Pull myself together and turn on his light to inspect. His car was turned off, batteries were out, and remote had no batteries either. My brother sweats when he's in deep sleep. This was the only way I could ever tell he was sound asleep and not waking up or fake sleeping. He was sweating. I threw his car and just turned off his light and ran to my room. Multiple occasions I remember the sound of shuffling boxes across the floor, but from the ceiling. Again, my grandma said there was nothing up there. She blamed it on bats. In between my dad's room and the bathroom was a boiler room. Every night before bed, I would close this door tightly and lock it. I always got up in the middle of the night to pee, and every time the door is wide open. Multiple times I would hear it unlock and open. One of the renters who lived in our TV room was sleeping, and in the middle of the night felt the feeling of somebody sitting at the end of his bed. He woke up, didn't see a figure, but an imprint on his bed. My grandma's dad was living with her, before he passed. Was sleeping in a room on the first floor. Her bedroom at the time was my dad's room. He saw a figure with an old army coat from the Navy. The last time my grandma was in the house was packing up the last of things to move. She was in the house going to the bathroom, and her husband at the time was outside across the driveway over by the neighbors. My grandma heard somebody coming up the 3 stairs on the side of the house, shuffled feet and muffled steps. My grandma thought it was Keith, her husband. A few seconds later, he comes barging in, so she tells him. He said, "That's weird, I thought you were going upstairs." She goes, "No, I was in the bathroom." He said, "I saw a dark figure going up the stairs as I was walking back from the neighbor, and I thought it was you." The neighbors were friends of my grandma, and even after they moved, they hired a medium to come and inspect the house. The neighbors told this lady nothing about the history of the house, or the layout. She didn't explore the house at all. She only stayed in the first floor. She gave details of the house layout perfectly, and this house was haunted by 3 ghosts with a dark past. Here's what the medium found, and told her by the ghosts themselves. The 3 ghosts are the mother Weber, the father, and the son. The son died at a young age in his 20s from yellow fever. He was also in the military. The son did not have a good relationship with the father. Father was very abusive and even had his drunk friends abuse him too, sexually and physically. The father would drag the son to the storage rooms in the basement and beat him. So would his friends. His hiding spaces were the crawl spaces in my brother's room and the boiler room. The son then said he killed his mother. As a ghost. He said he was watching his mother do laundry and she was bent over the cistern wall. He said as a ghost that he pushed her in. She drowned. Supposedly, that's how the mother died, was from drowning in the cistern. He said he was so mad at her for allowing him to be abused all of his life. The son mentioned the activity was due to him not wanting my grandma to leave because he liked her and he felt safe, because she takes care of the kids like him. My grandma was a foster mom to boys who were troubled. There's no way this medium would know any of this. Since my grandma moved out, it's been a bed and breakfast ever since. Got put on the historic landmark. Dream visitors. First, I'm not a big dreamer. I don't often dream, or at least I don't remember if I do dream. The dreams I do remember I can't really explain and don't remember for long. My dreams are like weird movies. I'm not an active player. My point is the fact that I've remembered any part of these dreams being out of character for me. I also don't have lucid dreams or have sleep paralysis. Anyway, my first experience was 8 years ago. I was sitting in an American Southern church, something you would see in a movie. I was sitting in the middle towards the back of the church. Suddenly, a well-dressed man was sitting next to me. He had a charming vibe. Think Lucifer from the TV series if he was subtle. I noticed him, and he would say to me something along the lines of, "Can you believe people buy this crap?" He said it in a way that suggested everybody else there was stupid, and we were smart. I affirmed that I believed in Jesus and God and woke up. This was a very clear dream at the time. It's kind of stayed with me. My second could just be a dream, but it happened a year or so ago. This time, I appeared to be in an airport, and this plain woman asked or told me I had to go with her, claimed to be an angel. I started going with her when I sensed something was off about her. She didn't really take her eyes and didn't really look right, kind of in a hurry. It was like she was a robot or something wearing a human face that just didn't quite fit. We were at the baggage area where she was packing clothes or something into her bag. She kept looking around, sensing something wasn't right. I decided to test her by asking her to say the name Jesus Christ. She refused and urged me to go with her. That's when I knew she wasn't an angel. I kept saying his name until I woke up. If she had been able to say the name, I would have gone with her. Haven't had any other dreams that I can remember where I can think and make decisions or have any real awareness. Heard a voice calling my name outside my bedroom window at 11 p.m. So this literally just happened last night. I'm not really sure if it's paranormal, but it's pretty creepy. So my room is up against the front side of my house on the second story. There's a window facing the front yard right next to my bed. I'm sitting there reading a book with my lamp on when I start hearing my name outside. First, it was so quiet that I didn't really hear it or pay attention to it. But then it got louder and louder. I was really confused because it sounded like my old neighbor who just moved out, but visited that same day. Because it sounded like an 11-year-old boy's voice. Although it sounded off from my old neighbor. I was confused, though. He had visited my house that day and had already left to go back to his house in another town. Plus, it was really late at night for him to be trying to get to me to go outside. I could tell from the tone of voice that whoever it was trying hard to get someone's attention. But right when I paid attention to the voice and thought all this, the voice stopped, and I realized that my shadow was being projected onto the window because of the lamp. I looked out the window, didn't see anyone there, but I heard as if someone was opening and closing the downstairs window on the side. I went downstairs and checked with my sisters who were watching TV. I asked them if the TV was loud or if they heard somebody calling my name. To both of which they said no, and the TV was actually really quiet. Then I went into my parents' room to ask them about it. Both of them had been asleep and heard nothing. I just went back to sleep at that point and nothing else happened. The thing is, this isn't the first time I've heard voices at that window. Years ago when my house was severely haunted, I was opening the blinds in the morning and I heard a woman whisper right into my ear, "Good night." I could even feel breath on my ear. I smiled because I thought it was my mom messing with me and saying good night when it was morning. Turned around with a smile and my smile immediately disappeared from my face. There was nobody in the room. Everybody else was either across the hall or downstairs completely. Plus, I didn't hear anyone come or leave. Hopefully others have seen something similar. This happened to me when I was 16, and to this day I still don't have an explanation as to what it was. Well, I was playing Xbox at the time, and I had the window to my room open because it was the middle of August and it was hot. The time was about 11:30 at night when I decided to turn everything off. I got up to turn off my light, and when I did, I heard a woman's hum. I turned the light back on and looked around, but chalked it up to me going crazy. When I turned the light off again, I walked over to my bed and was about to lay down when I heard the hum again. But this time I knew it was coming from outside. At this point I started to freak out a little because I didn't know what was there. So I creeped up to the window and looked outside in the darkness. There was nothing there initially until this orange mist-like anomaly that was maybe 2 feet tall by 2 feet wide passed in front of my face from left to right, and I absolutely freaked out. I ran to my dad at the time and told him about it, but he didn't believe me. He said I was just tired. Couldn't sleep in this room for a few weeks, and for context, my window's about 11 feet off the ground, so I know it wasn't a person, and I know it wasn't an animal because I've never seen an animal glow in the dark in Chicago suburbs. What I do know is that this thing was curious with me at the time, and to this day I still don't know what it was. Have any of you ever ran into something like this? Disturbing creature watching in the house. My sister oftenly suffered from sleep paralysis. She was saying it's a creature that tries to suffocate her, but she got used to that until the paralysis was happening less often. Well, as always, I was thinking it's nothing serious or something paranormal as sleep paralysis. It's a pretty well-known thing. Straight to the point. Last year, exactly on the 18th of November, she had a disturbing feeling. It was about 3 a.m. She wasn't sleeping and was simply playing a game or something on her phone. Suddenly, one of her ears started vibrating. It's a similar effect to one that happens after an explosion. Then, from her words, she looked toward the direction that she felt the vibration from and saw that creature. She also was silently crying and laughing at the same time, but she got the courage to take a photo of it. After that, we forgot about this incident. We usually teased her, saying, "The little house monster is watching you," which probably pissed her off because we didn't really believe in her words and thought it was just a simple window reflection. However, about a week ago, on the 11th of January this year, she saw the same creature watching strangely from the bathroom window. The creature seemed to be the same one she saw before. This time the picture was clearer, and that thing no longer looked like light reflection but an actual being. I remember her running back into the kitchen room telling me that she saw it again. Can't understand what this is, but yesterday she claimed that she saw that creature again at 2:50 a.m., but before it, I swear, 10 minutes before, I felt like half of my body became numb. I felt overwhelmed. She couldn't sleep an hour after that. I stayed up listening to music, trying to feel better. Paranormal activity in my apartment. So I live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my husband and cat. We've been living here for a little over a year now, and in the past year we've experienced some unexplainable phenomena. The most common being doors being open after we've shut them. We shut a door, we leave or walk away, come back, and the door is fully opened. We've also noticed heaters being turned on and neither of us turn them on. We've brushed a lot of this off as we do have a cat and we're both ADD, so I figure maybe we just forgot about opening a door. But the more it happens, the more we question it because all of our doors have doorknobs, so it's not like she can just grab them and twist them. and we might forget things from time to time, but not as often as we've been noticing things. I've had it happen a couple of times where I'm showering and I hear the door open and I look and it's shut. I've also experienced the door opening while I'm in the shower and no one's in there. The apartment community is older, but the vintage magic tricks my husband, he sort of collects these things. Or I guess her husband collects vintage magic tricks. They could be older. I told my husband the other day that if there's a spirit in the apartment, it's probably from his vintage magic trick collection. We joke about it from time to time. I don't know if spirits can really attach themselves to inanimate objects like they do in The Conjuring or not, but if they could, you would think that they would be generalized to where the magic tricks are located. But all of the instances have been throughout the apartment. Anyways, the reason I'm posting this is because this morning my husband woke me up early this morning asking me what I wanted. I didn't understand what he meant because I was asleep, and he said he heard me say his name. Later in the morning he asked me if I remembered saying his name at all. I told him I might have been sleep talking, but I don't talk in my sleep usually. Actually, I don't think I ever have. At least nobody's ever said anything about it. I decided to look into spirits mimicking people, and found here on good old Reddit that this is actually pretty common. Paranormal experiences working at a funeral home and cemetery. Combo location. I'll start off with the typical light stuff. One of my coworkers tends to come in very early every morning to start at work. I like to kind of stay late, and we both spend a good amount of time alone in the funeral home. We both have had experiences of hearing footsteps down the halls, wood floors and long hallways that echo, seeing things out of the corner of our eye, hearing faint voices. Nothing too surprising considering there's like an abundance of loved ones in our, care at every given time. Some having more traumatic passings than others. I will admit, though, that the funeral home itself is pretty tame. There have been many strange occurrences in the cemetery experienced by the grounds crew, cemetery staff, and funeral home staff. One day I was standing at a service. It was early morning. I turned and saw a man under a tree not too far away from me. He looked at a place, and I saw no cars around beside the few the family drove. I turned to look at him once more, and then for a third time a minute or so later, and he had vanished. This has happened to multiple people too, mind you, and we have 17 gardens. I would have seen him walking away or would have seen the car he was in. A coworker of mine on the cemetery side worked with the man for a while after his wife passed. He wanted a granite pedestal, a stand that holds an urn with a sort of customizable topper. He wanted it with a bird bath on top. For about a year, he would hound my coworker wanting to know when it would arrive. That's when, unfortunately, the expected waiting period for custom granite memorials was pretty long. When it finally arrived, we placed his wife inside and had a service. A few months after, my coworker who worked with him woke up from her sleep because she kept hearing bird bath, bird bath, bird bath being yelled in her ear. She actually came in the next morning and said he died before he had even received the first call, notification of a death. Lastly, to avoid this being too long, is 2 stories about our chapel mausoleum. It is the only mausoleum on site with an interior and has large stained glass windows and rows of chairs to sit and visit loved ones, or for when services are held inside. This mausoleum is locked every day at 4 when the grounds team leaves. It's unlocked at around 6 or 7 a.m. One morning, one of the guys walked into the mausoleum after unlocking it to turn on the lights. Saw a woman sitting in one of the chairs by the windows facing away from him. He freaked out and walked out to call the superintendent. When he walked back inside, the lady was gone. There is only one entrance to that mausoleum. He was standing right in front of it. We heard knocks and shifting noises all the time in that mausoleum. It's so prevalent, I actually address everyone in there when I enter and exit to avoid any bad juju. We had a maintenance crew working on the mausoleum for a while that would come in every morning to find their tools moved all around the room. They would set them on one side of the chapel and come back to them on the other side of the room. One of the workers said he would never, ever come back. What was it? A watcher? A portal being? No idea where to go. Not going to do a lengthy backstory, except that I was raised outdoors. Hiking, saltwater fly fishing, hunting, and I'm an Eagle Scout. This happened 20 years ago in the panhandle of Florida. I had been working 12-hour night shifts for almost a year. Wasn't drunk or on anything else. I took my 67 Firebird convertible to an old car wash around 1:30 a.m. No other cars were there, and it was located on a main road, but being a medium-sized city, there wasn't much traffic at the time. I pulled the car into the vacuum machine with the front facing the road and the rear toward the open-ended car washing bays. Took out the floor mats, started the loud machine, started cleaning. Almost 3/4 of the way through it, I was bent over half in, half out of the car. Got the overwhelming feeling I was being watched. Leaned out of the car and stood up. I was not expecting what I saw. It's hard to describe, but I'll do my best. Behind me was one of the car wash bays. 3 of them connected together with cinder block walls between them. Typical style setup. Hose on the side, no front or rear so you can drive through it. Around 20-foot ceilings. Top of the ceiling had a large light that illuminates the stalls and projects about 10 feet on either side of the stalls. It had been using this as sort of a car wash my whole life until I moved from the area. There was something there, not standing, just there. I wouldn't describe it as floating, but it wasn't touching the ground. Seemed the shape was about 7 feet tall and the bottom was 2 feet off the ground. This will sound insane, but here it goes. It was like looking at someone's shadow. You could make out a head area, shoulders where the arms would be, and leg area, proportioned like a tall human would be. But it was all a shadow. No gaps for the armpits or center lines for legs. A standing shadow, I guess I would call it. The main body shape was black with a little TV-like fuzz effect through it, on older TVs. Around its full outline I can only describe as static electricity. Nothing shooting out everywhere away from it, but arching around it. Didn't believe it for a second. I noticed that everything else looked normal, so I wasn't having a heart attack or a seizure. I could see the fencing dumpsters back behind it. It was literally almost in the middle of the washing stall, but more to the front. I was around 20 yards away from me. Got no bad feelings from it, didn't feel sick, just like it was observing me. The loud vacuum was still running. I couldn't hear anything coming from it, so I don't know if it made any noise. I acknowledged it in my mind. I thought, okay, I see you. I'll get my things and leave. Never approached or moved, it was just there. Went around the car and grabbed my floor mat on the passenger side, no clue why. Should have just left. Rounded the front of my car with it still just there. Sat down, started the car, looked back, and it was gone. Drove off immediately. Don't expect anybody to understand, just knew if it wasn't, well, I knew that it wasn't there to harm me. I've had a few other weird happenings in the woods, but nothing crazy. I really just felt like it was a watcher. It was there just to observe. I've searched for other encounters with descriptions like this, but I found none. Sorry if my voice is hard to hear today. Singing all day and my voice is kind of destroyed. But we press forward anyway. On to the next story. Weird experience in Morocco. My story is from 2014. I was 19 years old, and it happened in the middle of the day, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Can't remember exactly. I was in Morocco, in a very small village of 30 people near a beach in the Atlantic coast. There were 2 dogs in front of the house to protect it. My family wanted to go to the beach, but I was starting to get flu symptoms, so I decided to stay in the house and rest, even if I would be alone all day. I didn't want to catch a cold at the beach or whatever. From now on, I have to say that I didn't take any medication or anything else to feel better, so it's not a case of hallucinations. I was laying on the bed just reading a fantasy book. No music, no TV, nothing that could do any sort of noise. At some point I heard the 2 dogs barking so loudly, as if an unknown person was coming. I went to the window quickly, but no one was there. No family member, no stranger, nobody. A few seconds after hearing the dogs barking, I started to notice that I was hearing another noise, a very strange noise coming from the kitchen. It was like whispers, like if 2 or 3 women were whispering some sort of incantations in the kitchen. I was so afraid I didn't know where these whispers came from. It wasn't from the pipes, nor from the wind. There was no wind that day. It was just there, floating in the air, and I couldn't do anything to make it stop. After 3 minutes, the whispers and the barking stopped simultaneously. Since that day, I'm afraid to be alone in remote houses like that, especially if no one's there. I'm also afraid of dogs. I never knew what happened that day. I never actually asked anybody what it could have been. Never had any other weird experience. Another weird story in Morocco. I think it was around 2005 or 2006, so I was 10 or 11. I don't remember exactly, but I wasn't even a teenager for sure. But I was in Morocco in a village near the city of Tafarout. I was attending a family wedding in a very big house. It's like an old riad, meaning that when somebody was ringing the bell, we had to walk nearly 5 minutes to go to open the door. There was no automatic system to open the door from the inside. Something ringed the bell, and I went to open the door. But when I arrived and opened it, nobody was there. The only thing I found on the floor was an egg. The egg was carved with weird symbols like Nordic runes, but I guess it was old runes from the area. I didn't touch it because I found it weird, so I called a cousin who told me that somebody was trying to curse the bride. Something unbelievable happened this morning. I'm frozen. I still don't know what's happening. I've already posted twice on the sub with similar experiences like this, but this is the craziest thing I've experienced. This morning I woke up as I normally did at around 6 a.m., picked up my phone and started messaging my friends and watching videos as I normally do. Around 10 minutes in my peripheral vision, I see a woman walk through my doorway. At first, I didn't bat an eye. Thought it was just my brain playing tricks on me. So I looked to its direction. My heart dropped to my stomach. It didn't disappear. It was a woman. Not a shadow figure, but a woman who I didn't recognize. Very tall, around 50 years old as it looked. Had long ginger curly hair whose head was tilted slightly. Just staring emotionlessly at me. I stared in utter paralyzing fear for around 3 seconds before I blinked and she was gone. At that point, I was frozen in my bed with my phone dropped on the floor for a solid minute before I finally snapped and threw my duvet off and sprinted down the stairs to wake up my parents like an 8-year-old. At that point, I was on the border of bursting into tears. My parents just said they were just tired, told me to go back upstairs. It was only later that morning that they actually took me seriously. It's also important to mention that at the time I was not tired and was for sure not dreaming or daydreaming. Are there any possible explanations for this, or am I just going crazy? Let me know so I stop getting shaken up by this. Child Spirit Encounter. So today I was at the park. Pretty normal, I was chilling, and despite being a teenager, I decided to go on the big swings for the good old times. I kid you not, I wasn't even swinging hard enough for the swing next to me to move, but it did. Not that it was windy either. There was no wind at all. So I opened my Spirit Box app that I have on my phone to scare my friends from time to time, since there's kind of not big believers in ghosts. I didn't speak at all, I just let whatever was next to me talk. I heard, here, and next to you. Then some weird static noises, so I couldn't quite figure out what they were saying. I usually hear a lot of voices talking over each other on the app, but now it was just only one voice. Got off the swing with my app still open and heard, "Come back." So I did. The swing next to mine was still swinging even when I fully stopped. I just sat there, zooming out. Then I felt like something was pushing me, which gave me chills down my spine, and that sensation that people feel when their heart drops to their stomach. But it was peaceful in some way. Wasn't scared or anything. Then I got up once again, and after a good amount of time passed, like 5 to 10 minutes, I decided to go back to it, and saw that even though my own swing stopped, the other one didn't. I did talk to a child spirit a few days ago, and he might be following me around. I don't know, I'm just delusional maybe, and don't know how physics work. I also started seeing shadows in the forms of people in the corner of my eye, but that might just be paranoia. Again, I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating. Edit. I've only had one more talk through the Spirit app with the spirit. It wasn't very long, just usual questions about how he died and stuff. Then he told me that he wants me to tell him. He wants me to tell him, Mom, that he misses her. So I did. I found her weird, I know, and I commented on her post about how her son misses her in such a manner. Looks like encouraging words. Gray creature walking on all fours in the woods. What was it? For context, I live in rural northwest Arkansas. I was in the backseat of a car riding through the woods this past December when I saw it. It was very tall and it was walking on all fours, but its hind legs brought its rear up a good foot or so above its head. I would say it was about as tall as a person. It was very thin and bony, but it looked like it had grayish pale skin over its body. It was walking just behind the tree line on the side of the road. The car was going about 40 miles an hour on a straight road, so I had a few solid seconds of looking at this thing before we passed it. And I know it wasn't just an optical illusion, I saw the thing clear as day. My family said it might be a deer with chronic wasting disease, but it was much taller than any deer I've ever seen. Its body wasn't shaped like a deer at all either. It had a humanoid face that I can't really describe other than looking sort of like a small human head, but with something wrong with it, like sickly gray and emaciated. No antlers or anything, just a freaky face. Its mouth was hanging open and it had solid black holes like things for eyes. It was honestly terrifying and it still has me pretty freaked out. Been trying to figure out what it may have been, but I haven't found anyone who's seen something matching that description. My closest guess was that it might be a Wendigo or skinwalker. Figured I'd post here to see if anybody has any theories on what it could have been. Dormant ghost. Uptick in activity. For context, I've worked in the same office building for over 3 years now. My coworkers have always talked about a ghost being here. I work at a mental health clinic. There are only 10 of us, usually less due to people who have WFH, work from home. We're all spiritual people, and all believe in ghosts. Haven't had my own experience, but others have. I've talked to coworkers who have worked in the building prior to myself. They reported nothing happening when they were here. The activity started off as very infrequent and inconsistent, like 1 to 2 times a year, and has been increasing to new activity every couple of months. The activity, my knowledge of the ghost, started with a closet door that couldn't really or wouldn't even open. It was like unlocked. My coworker said it felt like a force on the other end. The door later opened on its own despite a few of us trying to get in there. There have been other run-of-the-mill stuff like footsteps and phantom cigarette smell. Doors opening and closing. Door chimes going off when no one is here. And it's escalated to 2 apparition sightings in the last few months. Saw a very tall, skinny yellow figure standing in my bedroom doorway as a child. This still haunts me to this day, and I can't explain what I saw. Curious if anybody else has had or heard of a similar experience. This was in '91. I was about 7 years old at the time, and I remember my sister and I shared a room with separate beds. She's 2 years younger. Our parents put us to bed for the night. It was pitch black in the room, no night light or anything or TV. I remember I just couldn't fall asleep for some reason this night. My sister was knocked out pretty quick, or I probably would have bothered her out of boredom. I remember staring at the ceiling for a while and out of the window a lot, until I looked across the room. Standing in my doorway was a very tall, skinny figure. It was solid with glowing yellow. There was no facial features at all, but it had long arms and long legs. It was just frozen. And I was just frozen. I had so much fear, and I couldn't make any noise, to be honest, because I thought it was going to attack me or something. As a kid, I instantly put the covers over my head, hoping it would leave. I peeked out about 3 times to see if it was gone. It wasn't. It just stood in the same spot, its head almost touching the top of the doorway, and it never moved. Just stood there each time I looked. So I finally mustered up the strength to scream out for my parents very loudly, and I started crying. I remember my dad rushing in, and he walked straight through to this thing and turned the light on. I remember telling them this story that night, and to this very day I cannot sleep with a single door open. I've had other weird paranormal experiences over the course of my life, but never saw it again, or really any figure. Still scared one day I'll see it again, but who knows? As an adult, I remember talking about it at a family event and my uncle casually bringing up my imaginary friend, Bebo, I had back then. I have no clue if that's related, but freaked me out. First, I'd never heard of him. Just curious about any similar stories or things anybody's seen about anything like this. Savannah, Georgia ghost sighting. I've shared this on a couple of other threads, hoping to find somebody who may have seen something similar in a graveyard in Savannah, Georgia. Not sure exactly which graveyard it was, but it may have been the Colonial Park Cemetery. In the fall of 2006, I was visiting Savannah, Georgia, went on a ghost tour. While we were in the graveyard at night, the tour guide was telling us some stories about the people buried there. There was enough light around her to see around a little bit, and out of nowhere I saw a pair of legs and feet walking out from behind her. The figure just casually walked by and then disappeared. It looked like the figure was wearing an old pair of boots, like maybe what you would expect a soldier to be wearing in the 1700s. I was 13 at the time, and I just stood there in disbelief as to what I'd just seen. After I unfroze, I realized I should try to take a picture, but the figure had already disappeared. I was so freaked out. Didn't really think anybody would believe me. Just kept it to myself. Never really believed in ghosts, but this was 10,000% confirmation for me that they are real. A few times over the years, I try to look at reviews of the tours to see if anybody else has seen the same thing, but with no luck. I know there have been a lot of ghost sightings in Savannah, but I do wonder if anybody else had seen this particular apparition. Who was singing? About 2 years ago, I, a female 24 currently, was with my best friend, a female 23, in her parents' house, which happens to be one street away from my parents. We hung out there after work and school and at the weekends, any free time that we both had. The apartment is a duplex, and her room is on the top floor. We were waiting for her little brother, 14, to come home from school at about 6:15. At the time, it was 6 p.m., so there was no way in hell he would get out at 6 p.m. and get home not a minute later. Yet we heard him get to the lower apartment, open the door, and start singing, which was a totally normal thing for him to do. Called his name so many times and he kept singing, but he didn't answer. We were pissed at him because we wanted him to run to the store by the house to grab us all some food. So we just laughed it out and sat a bit, finishing what we were doing before going down and teasing him about ignoring us. Little backstory. The lower apartment is composed of a kitchen, a bathroom, 2 living rooms, 1 small and 1 big, and the parents' bedroom and a little, brother's bedroom. I just hated the side of the kitchen and the big living room, and I never felt comfortable there. It always looked dark no matter how many windows are open and how many people are there. I hated and almost never go there. Even praying there didn't feel right. Back to the story. A couple of minutes before going down to the intercom, it started ringing. We called the still singing dude to pick up, but he didn't, so I went down, but nobody was there. No one. Her little brother who was singing was the one ringing. We opened the door for him and he got up and asked him if he got in. Said he left his keys in. He had just gotten out of school. It was 6:12 p.m., which is logical walking and talking to his friends on the way and all. I checked the keys. They were inside the house. My friend refused to talk any more about it because she lived there and didn't think more. Just like any other experience that she had. But this one, we couldn't brush it off. We eventually talked about it because it was shared. We can't hallucinate the same thing for like 10 straight minutes, but we can't explain it either. Real supernatural incident that I experienced when I was 10 years old. I'm from Asia. I have a deep fascination for the supernatural. I've been reading ghost stories posted in this community for quite some time now and have enjoyed a lot of them. However, today I would like to share an incident that happened with me when I was 10 years old. English isn't my first language, so I apologize for any grammatical error in advance. So here's what happened. This incident took place when I was 10. The year was 2001. I was living with my maternal uncle and his wife as my school at the time was about 5 minutes away from their home. My uncle's wife had given birth to their second child, and another one of my aunts had decided to stay with us to help my uncle and his aunt manage things. We used to sleep in the same room as there were 3 beds in the room arranged in a U-shape. My aunt and her newborn child used to sleep in one bed, my other aunt and the first child used to sleep on the second bed, and I and my uncle used to sleep on the third one. One night my uncle woke me up and he looked pretty excited. I was still half asleep and didn't understand what was happening. He said I need to get up quickly as somebody was here to meet me. Thought it was already morning and my parents had come to see me, and I got excited and sat up pretty quickly, and what I saw completely puzzled me. Both my aunts were sitting together on the bed opposite to mine. My uncle also went there and sat beside my aunts as soon as I got up. There's a girl standing in front of them. She looked like she was 16 or 17 years old, and she was smiling at me. She started walking towards me. This scared me, and I jumped and stood over my bed. She tried to climb over the bed, but I pushed her and she fell down. She got up, looked at me, and started trying to get on the bed. Again, I pushed her back again. This happened a third time too, and I got really scared. The fact that my uncle and aunts were all watching all this quietly freaked me out. When she got up the fourth time, I closed my eyes, joined my hands in prayer, and started praying out loudly. After a few moments of praying, I felt someone's hand on my shoulder, and for a moment I thought that girl caught me. But when I opened my eyes, it was my uncle. He asked me why I was standing on my bed and praying out loudly in the middle of the night. They assumed that I was sleep-talking, but I explained them that I wasn't, told them about the whole incident, comforted me and tried to make me go back to sleep, but the fear of what has just happened prevented me to go to sleep again that night. At that time, they convinced me that it was just a bad dream, but when we talked about the incident now, they admit that they all believe in the supernatural, and what I saw that night could be 100% real. I know there's a little scientific proof that spirits exist, but I truly believe that I was not dreaming that day, and whatever I saw was real. Remembering the ghost my roommates and I lived with years ago. After my freshman year of college, my randomly assigned roommate turned best friend and another girl on our floor who we became very close with in the dorms all decided to rent a house together the following year. The other girl, her stepdad, flipped houses and had recently renovated this place that was 2 blocks from campus. A 3-bed that cost us $300 to $400 a month each, really affordable for a bunch of 19-year-olds. The house itself was gorgeous, with a sunroom, a basement with a washer and a dryer, 2 beds on the main floor with a bathroom, and basically an upstairs suite with a huge master and walk-in closet and private bath. The other girl took that whole floor to herself since it was her dad's place. Didn't pay rent because her family thought she was too busy with cheerleading and her sorority. That's a whole separate conversation leading up to why my best friend and I moved out. The important thing is, my friend and I had the 2 main levels of the 2 main level rooms, just off the living room with the bathroom between us. Don't even remember when the paranormal experiences started. I remember by October, and we moved in August. It was enough that her dumbasses did a seance and had already named our ghost Claire. With all the windows closed, we asked her a bunch of questions, and she moved the candle different directions for yes and no. Things were really bad for my friend, and mildly annoying for me. This all happened on the main level, and the third girl never experienced anything. My friend would experience sleep paralysis frequently, wake up to a woman sitting on top of her, or see her standing in the corner near a closet. The sink in the bathroom between our rooms would turn on and off all night. For me, she would open my door and get into bed with me. Funny thing is, at first I didn't even realize it was the ghost doing that. The third roommate had a cat, and I assumed the cat was in bed pretty often. After a while, when I would feel the weight pushing down on the bed, I would keep turning around, and nothing and no one was there. Turn my back, and a second later the weight would get closer to me. Turn around, and nothing. I worked 12-hour shifts on Saturdays, and I would be so exhausted I just started to let it happen. So frequent that it wouldn't even be worth the fight to get up and close my door or roll over to check the bed. I only saw her once. I was home alone and deep cleaning my room. The light was on in the living room, and my room created a sort of triangle of darkness in that short hallway. I was pulling the vacuum out of my room when out of the corner of my eye a woman with dark hair was standing behind me. She was so real. Both my roommates had dark hair. I jumped and said, "Oh my God, you scared me." As I was turning around, and when I finished turning, no one was there. That was the first time Claire actually spooked me. My friend and I moved out a few months later due to a lot of issues with the third roommate. In the years following, whenever the experience gets brought up with my friend, they're near tears talking about the terror that Claire put her through at night, whereas I often joke about how I had a ghost girlfriend cuddling with me at night. I don't know why she was nice to me. In some ways, I feel bad that she revealed herself to me and I was scared of her. She seemed harmless, just kind of active. Then again, she was so awful to my friend, and that's also unexplainable. I think the funniest part of this story, though, is when constantly living with an active entity. You do eventually get used to whatever they're doing. Between nursing school for my friend and classes plus 30 hours a week of work at a standing job, at some point I need sleep no matter who's in bed. Any advice? Since I would say middle school anytime I've lived with her, or even not lived with her. I'm 23, living on my own, and she still experiences strange things. There have been strange occurrences. Here's some examples. I've always woken up randomly in the middle of the night for as long as I can remember. So when I was about 11, the condo we were living in was just me and my mom. We had a Jack and Jill style bedrooms with the bathroom connecting us. And I would randomly in the middle of the night hear my mom's flat iron cord hitting against the bathroom cabinets. And I knew that sound because I was very used to hearing it in the mornings. When she got ready, she would kind of also hear scratching on the walls in her bedroom. I moved in with my dad at 12 till I was 17. Never experienced really anything out of the ordinary. And I'm unsure if my mom did living by herself. When I moved back in with her at 17, we lived in a condo. Me and my mom and her husband at the time who worked third shift. Here I experienced an old VCR player in my room randomly turn itself on and start rewinding itself even though it was unplugged. I was almost asleep one night and felt the palm of a hand slightly slap me on the cheek twice. I had a small dog at the time who'd randomly growl and follow something that wasn't there. When I wasn't home, my mom and stepdad would say they could hear talking in my room. They would be in the living room. My mom also on 2 separate occasions heard a man say hello to her at night while in bed and felt as if something sat on the bed and caused it to dip down while she was home alone. Also felt as if something lifted up at the end of her bed and shook it. At 19, me and my boyfriend, now husband, moved into our own place. Never experienced any sense of it, but my mom lives in a different place with her current boyfriend, and while her boyfriend was mopping home alone, when he turned around he saw 2 footprints in a wet mopped floor behind him. They were bare footprints. He always wears shoes in the house too. My little sister, who is 3, started randomly pointing and laughing at something over my mom's shoulder while she was dressing her. My mom's boyfriend woke up in the middle of the night to the feeling of getting scratched on his back, and my mother was facing the opposite way asleep, and there were red scratch marks on him the next morning. There's several other things that have happened, but those are the biggest things I can think of at the moment. I've often heard, the more you talk about it, the worse it gets. But with everything that's happened and the fact that it's always where she lives, it leads me to believe something is attached to her. What that is, I have no clue. But how does one even go about fixing this? And how does one end this story, other than saying, see ya?